Grief comes in different shapes and forms, right? You could lose someone, you could lose an opportunity, you could lose a relationship, you could lose anything. Not all therapy is helpful in certain situations.
Give me an example of good and bad therapy.
The word I use, bias. If you don't want to save a life, why would you work in a profession that is geared towards saving lives, right? So it's sort of counterintuitive to be in the profession and not have empathy, in my view.
What's your definition of saving a life?
Saving a life. Oh yeah, saving a life is, mental health. People do commit suicide eventually if they can't come to terms with what's going on in their head, right? So that is saving a life.
Yeah. I have a question because I've never experienced bad therapy. It's so funny because actually Pamela just finished an episode and said she had bad therapy, and she was so keen on waiting behind to listen to you. But also I didn't realize, I thought all therapists were counsellors. I thought they were all empathetic. No?
That was my assumption.
So it's not no.
I start generalised because I don't know all therapists. So I wouldn't be able to generalise. Depending on what type of counselling you have.
Okay.
If you work with the person-centred counselling, which is very client-led, okay? It's a very gentle type of, Carl Rogers created person-centred therapy. And the three core conditions is congruence, unconditional positive regard as well, and just have that genuineness about, there's no judgment when it comes to when you say unconditional positive regard, no judgment whatsoever. And then you've got the congruence, so you being genuine, and so on and so on and so on. And the last one is empathy. And those are the three main core conditions of person-centred counselling. There are other conditions that are part of it, but these are the three main conditions that counsellors are required to demonstrate when they are working with person-centred counselling. Yeah? So the client needs to feel a genuineness from therapist. And like I said, it's very client-led, which means that you give the client a voice, autonomy. So if you have a client that comes in and finds, no one's listening to me, I've never been able to speak, or person-centred counselling would be a good start to start them to open up, give them a little bit of autonomy, and then they start to feel, okay, but a bit more in control. And who's the best expert here? You are the best expert, because no one knows you better than yourself. So you are the expert here. So when you tell a client that, it's like, okay, what is it I do want from my therapy? Where do I want to go from here? Well, as far as what a counsellor would do is that you're guiding. Yeah, we don't give advice, we make suggestions. You're there to heal, you're not there to fix. Okay, we're not fixers. We're here to guide, and we're here to heal you through the process of what counselling is all about. And as far as the client is concerned, it's about trusting the process of therapy. And if you can explain to them what it means, is it an overnight fix? Absolutely not. It is going to be a process. So they're under no illusion that this is just going to happen in a minute. So it's just working the client through that, and then whatever comes up. And like you said, empathy is kind of like, it's there when it comes to person-centered therapy.
Do you know what therapy you had? What kind of therapy?
I had a mixture.
So maybe you should stick this one. We'll need that one better. Okay, Andrea.
What do you have, if you don't mind me asking?
CBT, person-centered therapy. And I like to say self-therapy, right? I think this is a different conversation, but this is my controversial nature, right?
Okay. I love this.
But it's related to your statement around guidance and you being the person that can help yourself in this, like you know yourself better. I think if we flip that statement on the head, you self-therapy, or you are one of your best therapists, if that makes sense, because you are the one who goes to bed with your issues every night. The therapist is being paid whether you like it or not, right? And unconsciously, maybe it's the businessman in me. When I think that I'm paying someone, empathy is probably not on the list on that person's point of view because I'm paying that person, right? I think there's that self-therapy, but there are a lot of YouTubers and, you know, content creators who are starting to advocate that now. And I think that's always a good addition, but we're still a long shot away from, you know, people being self-empowered to the point where they can be their own therapist. But yeah, I mean, agreement with you.
Can you remember, if you think back, what your person-centered therapy was like for you personally, bearing in mind, and whether those 3 core conditions that you experienced, those 3 core conditions at the time, and was it explained to you at the time?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't explained.
Okay.
110%.
Go back for a refund.
I should probably do. 110%. It wasn't. But I am probably one in a few, right, who has done a lot of personal development, personal work prior to my breakdown. So I was well clued to a certain degree on what to do, what not to do, you know, certain things. It was just obviously when you're ill, when you're like, let's say you had great lungs, right, and your lungs starts to shut down, right? You don't know what's, like, your head can't process that. Your head can't process, how come I can't breathe properly? My lungs are, you know, this is fine. So you're still trying to grapple with that. So obviously that's why I went out to seek help, right? Perhaps if I hadn't been all the way down, right, I probably wouldn't need, you know, that counseling. Maybe I'll need somebody to talk to, or confident, but perhaps not a therapist. So I was probably lucky enough, right, that I had done that pre-work. But yeah, none of those were explained to me at all.
So how do you feel now that I've explained that part to you, that you actually didn't receive that yourself?
Makes me think it was worse than I thought.
Did you not feel too, when you were introduced to that approach of counselling, did you not feel that you could speak and say to your therapist that, you know, so can you tell me a bit more about this approach that you're working with me on?
That's a tough
Remember, you're paying for the session, right?
Well, that's a tough question. When someone's drowning, they're not thinking, how are you pulling me out of the water? When they're drowning, they're drowning.
Yeah.
Right? So there's no way I'm going to then ask you, please explain that to me. I just want to get out. I want to get back.
So with the person centered, so when you say you were drowning, okay, it sounds like you were obviously not in a very good place. Yeah. So with the person centered, I'm not saying it wouldn't work, but there are other forms of therapy as well that could have been used. So you said CBT, person centered, and you said self care for yourself. Was there any other therapy or psychodynamic therapy used with you?
I probably use psychodynamic therapy on myself. That is the context of self-therapy.
Right.
I'm well clued on a lot of that area, otherwise I wouldn't be playing in this space now, right? So I think in terms of support, it wasn't the greatest.
Right. Okay.
But I'm lucky. Not a lot of people are going to be as lucky as I am, right? If you don't give the right support, or, you know, enough support, right, we then see the headline, this person took their life, right? And then we start to scream and say, well, you know, how did it happen? And then we start to look for clues that perhaps, right, if we were a bit more, at least in my example, let's say the therapist explained that three guidance, right? You know, that probably would have put me a bit more at rest that this person knows what they're doing. Because when you are going through stuff, you are not thinking about all the different angles. I don't know if anybody else has ever gone through that. If you're going through a tough time, you're not thinking about, all the intelligent stuff. That's for YouTube.
So when you say that someone would take their life, are you saying, and I'll ask you straight, are you saying that the therapist could possibly be responsible for that happening? Do they play a part in it if someone decides, right, that's it, I'm taking my own life now?
Well, let's not go into that. Because I think that's a different conversation, because if you have a doctor do a wrong surgery, right? What happens?
They die.
And as in the person dies, but what are the chances? Like, what happens? Like, the family members can do what to the doctor? I'm looking for a word. Exactly. But that's a different practice.
My background is law. Before I became a counsellor, I was in law for 20 years, and I did clinical negligence, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I've dealt with all of those types of cases. We've had high-profile cases as well. So yes, of course. But what I'm trying to say is, and I'm going to push you a little bit, and I'm going to try and challenge you.
Yeah, thank you.
That you have said something that is very relevant, and you're saying it's not for but you brought the conversation in. Okay, so I'm just going to say to you, I'm not saying you have to. It's nothing about apportioning blame. What I'm saying is that, would you say, or I'll ask you a different way and put a legal head on, would you say that therapists could contribute to someone taking that?
Before I answer that, since you are a lawyer and you mentioned...
I'm not a lawyer, no.
I mean,
that's my legal background,
so
but I'm
you
now
talked
speaking...
about clinical negligence.
Yes.
Now, I don't know. You tell me, is it legal to... Can clinical negligence be related to the context of the therapist? I don't know. You tell me.
No.
Okay.
It's a different scenario altogether. If it's clinical negligence, is about exactly what it is. It's a negligence that's taken place. So if someone's had an operation and the doctors or whoever messed it up, that's a clinical negligence case right there. Okay. They have a duty of care. They haven't carried it out, and there's evidence to say that this wasn't done correctly, then you have a negligence claim on your hands, right? But it all has to be proved. It doesn't just happen just like that. With therapists, okay, different clients present in different ways, okay? If someone comes into the therapy room and is presenting with suicidal ideation, i.e. the thought of wanting to take your life, no, they haven't done it, but they think about it, is about, with all the approaches you can use, the most valuable thing that you can give your client is to listen. Yeah? Is to listen to that person speak. Because sometimes that's all they want, is to hear and to be heard. So you can say, I'm listening, but are you hearing me? And that's very different. Yeah? So when you say to a client, actually, I'm hearing you, and you can paraphrase, you can sum up, do summaries and say, did I hear you right? You're not telling them what they're feeling, you're asking them and saying, talk to me, and take your time. Silence is not, sometimes silence can be a little bit uncomfortable for some people in the therapy room, but sometimes silence is required. Yeah. And it's for the therapist not to be uncomfortable. Some are, some are not. But it gives the client an opportunity to think about and to digest and not to hurry them. And it's down to you at the time to decide, how am I working with this person who's going through something very serious at the moment?
Yeah. So I hate to put you on the line, right? Mm-hmm. But in your statement, you said the most important thing that a therapist can offer, I'm paraphrasing, for someone that's feeling suicidal is to listen.
Yes.
Okay. And then in your statement, you've differentiated between listening and hearing.
Yes.
So couldn't it be a better statement to say the most important thing a therapist can offer someone that is feeling suicidal is hearing, not listening?
No.
Because they're two different things.
Yes, they are two different things. But the first thing someone's going to say is they listen. So when you come into therapy, you're listening to that person. They're going to automatically think, they're going to think, oh, well, Andrew's hearing me. They're going to think, Andrew's listening to me. Right?
I understand
what you're saying.
No, I understand the nuance. But as a therapist,
Yes.
if you put that statement out,
Yes.
right, it means that the foundation in your thinking as a therapist is listening, because it's the most important thing you can offer.
It's one of the most important things, yeah.
If I'm taught to say, well, listening is the most important thing, then I'm not as bothered. Or if I don't have passion around people and stuff like that, then the due diligence of understanding the difference between listening and hearing, I wouldn't do that work, because I'm listening to you. Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
I am
But
listening.
it's for, right? What I'm saying is, I get you, but I don't share your view. Okay. So
don't have-
that's okay. We can agree to disagree. I get it. As a therapist, you listen. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that what people don't see is that you can listen, right, to what somebody's saying. So I can listen to what you're saying, and my mind could be somewhere else. I could be over there and thinking, oh, I just heard what she said. Yeah. That's a distraction right there. And people do it. You just say, yeah, yeah, and you're thinking, and then if you were asked to repeat that, you may actually falter, because you think, you appeared to be listening. So a client can look at you and you can appear to be listening and doing all the nodding and doing, yeah. And that's why reflecting back on what they said is very important. That's what hearing is all about.
I have learnt a lot, and she's very empathetic. Would you not agree?
Again, I think she is. I
don't think she is empathetic. You don't think?
It's tough. You
must
ask
be-
you can't ask the question and then answer the
Okay, I
question.
apologize.
Right? So you can't ask the question, is she empathetic? And then you
Okay,
say, she is empathetic.
I apologize.
I think that's-
I apologize.
I'll just say one last thing. And thank you so much for the conversation. It's really appreciated. But what I will say, and when I hear you, and I've listened to you, a lot of what you, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's just the feeling I get, okay, from watching you, your body language, just the way you come across. And yeah, you seem to know your stuff, and that you've really worked hard to get a good understanding, and you've had to actually find your way when it comes to therapy. And I'm sorry that you had to do that, to be honest. But a lot of that is down to your own experience, and no one can take that from you, because it is your experience. So I can't say yes, but it's your experience. You see what you were just saying, Tim. So it's so I kind of get that. So when you said, "Oh, do you think she's empathetic?" You might have said, "Well, actually, I don't think she's empathetic." You could well have said that, and I will just receive that and say, "Okay, that's his thought."
And I think empathy takes a while. You can't just judge.
Yeah, you don't know some. Yeah, I agree with
And
that.
I think
you don't know
with therapy, you usually not just go for one session, right?
Absolutely.
So it's after therapy, then
You build
that
up
question
the
becomes
therapeutic
quite
alliance.
relevant.
That's right. You have to, and then trust gets built and rapport gets built, and it takes time. Absolutely.
Wow, you're a tough cookie to crack. With everything you've said, because I'm really bad at articulating myself when it comes to mental health, because I have no knowledge. I, looking at you and from everything you've said and your mannerism, and because I know you're like an advocate and stuff, so I'm thinking, what is your opinion on mental health in Nigeria?
So the last part, I've been talking to over about 200 people over the last 18 months or so around mental health. And, pardon my opinion, but it's a podcast. and I want to give you great content, right?
Thanks
So
very much.
you're out, right? But I do listen, right? And I've spoken to 200 people roughly, right? Through qualitative in terms of interviews and surveys to understand how people feel about mental health. And the premise behind what I'm doing now is that I understand that mental health means different things to different people. Based on those conversations, I've come to realize that some people don't want therapy. They don't.
Yeah.
Some people do want therapy.
Yeah.
Some people have the nuances that we've been discussing that is stopping them from getting therapy, right? So all of these opinions I've shared is based on the conversations I've had with working moms, with students, with single, married, black, white, purple, everyone in between. So I'm forming that opinion and layering it with my own personal experience, but I'm not in any way sort of, trying to say that my way is the way. I think what we have agreed on is that, it starts with you. It starts with you, and that work comes with you. My thoughts around, this conversation moving forward is that I think we need to have more discussions like this around it, because if we have a one-size-fits-all approach to it, right? Someone has a behavioral issue or drug issue or addiction issue, and then we automatically pigeonhole them, right? Or marriage or whatever it is, and we pigeonhole them with one size. It's obvious that that's not working. Otherwise, we wouldn't be at where we are in the UK, right? And in the West. In the context of Nigeria, to the first question, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? I was in Nigeria for a couple of weeks towards the end of last year, right? And I spoke to Nigerians as well, right? There's a particular piece of United Nations information that says that 1 in 4 children in Africa is raised by a parent that is struggling with a critical mental health condition. Now, in Africa, across the continent, and I'm sure that number, if Nigeria is about 200 million people, right, and the continent is 1 point something billion, you see that it's a big size. But the numbers I'm about to share is for the continent as a whole. There's 100,000 therapists to one person. Now, the chance of that child getting that therapist is 0.4%. You see that dynamic, right? So there is a lot of work that needs to be done there, right? In Nigeria as well. So, but that's probably is not as shocking for some people, because that can translate to infrastructure and all sorts of issues that the continent generally struggles with anyway. But it is dire, is my point.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that was a lot to take in, but extremely educational. Thank you, Bo, because I learned a lot and was extremely informative. And I'm like, wow, okay. Sharon, do you have any last words?
My last word is, I think therapy, we should talk more about therapy, and all the nuances around it. And if you are struggling, please seek therapy, right? Therapy is helpful.
Okay, thank you. And Andrea, do you have any final words?
Just to mirror what was just said, completely would agree with all of that. I know that going in through the therapy journey can be quite a daunting one for a lot of people. Lots of questions that they're not sure they're going to be answered. And it's a massive, massive step. And I think we just have to appreciate what a big step it is for someone to actually go into the therapy room, and also to remember that what it's like to be on the other side of that, on if it's over Zoom, on the other side of the screen, and just to be in that seat as from a therapist's perspective. That's why lots of therapists have to have their own counselling, because we also need to see what it's like on the other side and what it feels like, because there's also that power thing because going on, and we don't know what the client's thinking. So we always have to bear that in mind. And that's what I would say to anybody that wants to come into therapy, is to know that we do think it's a massive step. We don't take it lightly, but completely agree. If you are struggling and you really do need that help, don't hold back. Please come forward and reach out.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for our next episode. Bye.